For the aged, the sick, the poor, the orphans, and of course, for the scholars.
ORT's appeal touches the Jewish values directly, for it brings to life the honored principle of Maimonides.
Anticipate charity by preventing poverty. Assist the reduced fellow man by teaching him a trade, so that he may earn an honest livelihood and not be forced to the dreadful alternative of holding out his hand for charity. This is the highest step and the summit of charity's golden ladder.
In the years to come, ORT dedicates itself to this. So the people give, and they plan, and they hope.
Tsar Alexander II isn't too bad after all.
He isn't too good either.
Well, it's all by comparison. It's possible to even have a foolish dream or two.
Within a year, the foolish dream becomes a nightmare. March 1st, 1881.
The Tsar has been assassinated.
And his son is the Tsar. The new Tsar, Alexander III, has his own solution to the Jewish problem.
1/3 will emigrate, 1/3 will convert, 1/3 will starve.
The words of the new Tsar's spokesman ring out across the land.
On your feet, gentlemen. The government is coming.
And come they do with terror and blood. Pogrom. Children hide in terror as the troops thunder through the villages, looting, destroying, killing. They sweep across the Pale, shattering the countryside with their anti-Semitism. They come to the ORT school in Zhytomyr, the first Jewish vocational school in Russia. They post the order.
The existence of a Jewish vocational school in an area where no similar schools exist for Christians will not be tolerated. Closed.
Jews are expelled from their villages. One Jewish newspaper writes,
The virulence of Russian anti-Semitism has faded the flowers and extinguished the fire of our hopes. Only a year and a half ago, we often mention in these columns the noble effort on behalf of the Jewish masses by ORT. And now, in so short a time, everything is changed. All farms and agricultural settlements, all vocational schools have gone up in smoke.
there is no longer hope for Gesund and Parnasse, health and a living for the Jew in Russia. Now there is one word on everyone's lips: emigrate. It is the beginning of the end of the shtetl. Over the next 25 years, helped by Hayas, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, 2 million will go. Pioneers from the shtetl. Most of them will go to America, the Ganef, where they will struggle and go hungry, and their children will be free.
But how we miss the old country. The sight of the woods and the stream, the sound of my mother singing.
Now, back in the shtetl, when the bookseller comes around, his bestseller is no longer the dream book or the Yiddish novel. Now the women want the Briefsteller, the letter composer, a book of model letters good for any occasion. So hundreds of lonely shtetl women are copying the identical letter. And hundreds of homesick husbands in America are reading the same words.
The children and I are waiting for you to send for us. Soon, God willing, we will all be in America together.
For those who remain in the shtetl, the years ahead will be grim. ORT barely stays alive for the next quarter of a century. Then in 1905, the desperate condition of the Russian people brings on a revolution. It fails. But the frightened Tsar Nicholas makes promises. Things will be better. He allows the first Duma, or Congress, to be elected. Among them are 12 Jewish deputies, one of them, Leon Bramson.
We must condemn the government for its pogrom in Bialystok.
2 days later, the members of the Duma are locked out, and the Duma is dissolved.
So much for democracy.
But at long last, ORT has finally received its charter, 25 years late. ORT springs into action.
Let's set up traveling workshops. We'll bring our classrooms to the shtetls.
We must teach them skills. Let's give them loans for tools and machines.
Help them settle outside the Pale if they want. You can now with a skill. Things are easing up.
Vilna is a sophisticated city. Let's set up courses there for electricians.
Who needs electricians? Who has electricity?
Today, nobody. Tomorrow, everybody.
ORT in St. Petersburg is offering a course in auto mechanics.
Who needs auto mechanics? Who has autos?
Today, nobody. Tomorrow, everybody.
Miss Sugar.
In the big cities, funds are raised. Men like Bramson become involved. Famous writers like Peretz and Sholem Aleichem are often seen at the meetings.
So are the police. But we pay them 3 rubles not to listen. That's called good relations.
In a few years, ORT is in 20 cities. They form cooperatives and teach quality control and scientific production. And the shtetl psychology begins to change as ORT moves in. But history cannot wait. History arrives and sits on the shtetl doorstep. The story goes that a shtetl learns that the government has ordered every house painted. Very strange. The people debate the order using Talmudic logic.
Why must the houses be painted? Obviously only because some important official is coming here.
But why should an important official come to a place like this? Obviously only for one reason. Military maneuvers.
But why would military exercises be carried on here, of all places? Obviously, only under threat of real war.
So the question is, with whom would such a war be? Turkey or Germany?
The year is 1914. The First World War makes the Jewish Pale one vast battlefield. It shatters forever the shtetl way of life in Eastern Europe as counter-marching armies smash their way across the Pale. By the end of the war, 6 million Jews will be scattered across Eastern Europe. The economic foundation of their communities destroyed. They flood the roads. Thousands of lost boys and girls wander aimlessly. Nothing is as it was.
But ORT is not a refugee organization. What do we do?
If the Jews are refugees, then ORT is a refugee organization. What do we do? What must be done? We will learn while we do.
How do you teach people a trade under such conditions? On the road, moving. What do you do for men and women 30, 40, 50 years old who will never return home to their old professions? Must they accept charity till the end of their days? These are the terrible questions that we must answer.
An ORT professional staff is assembled for the first time. They give aid in the art of survival. 72 unemployment offices are set up, 60,000 apply, 25,000 get work. Those with no skills get fast, short-term courses. ORT opens 25 new credit offices to lend money. Feeding kitchens are set up next to the shops to keep thousands from starving. The homeless children find a home in ORT dormitories.
Well, now ORT is ready for anything. We have learned our trade. Let the future bring what it must.
The future brings the Russian Revolution. Every Jewish peddler and shopkeeper, however poverty-stricken, is classified as a capitalist and parasite, a property owner, and therefore to be deprived of his civil rights. Only 1% of the entire Russian population is so classified, but 47% of all Jews. The entire ORT fund, which now totals 500,000 rubles, is lost to ORT. It is a time of changing boundaries, and it is a time of changing populations, as Jews find themselves uprooted and adrift in Eastern Europe.
All of ORT's funds have always been raised inside Russia, but now we'll have to go outside Russia for help.
World ORT Union is formed in Berlin in 1921, under the leadership of Bramson, Lvovich, and Singalovsky. Yashunsky will head ORT in the newly formed state of Poland. Zegelnitsky will try to revive ORT in the Soviet Union. The fate of these two men will be tied to the Jews of their country. Bramson and Lvovich go out to mobilize new support in the United States. They go first to the Russian Jews who had emigrated earlier and who now send money to ORT to aid their landsmen.
The philosophy of ORT is that wherever a Jew lives, that's where we help him. So what can we do to help a Jew in the Soviet Union?
The answer is the shipment of vast quantities of equipment and seed to government-approved workshops and farms in a mammoth campaign to retrain Jews so that they can be accepted as Soviet citizens. This successful program will continue until 1938. Then, along with so many other Jews, the Stalin purges will liquidate the director of ORT, Zegelnitsky. ORT in Russia will die. After World War I, Poland becomes a nation again. In the new republic, there are high hopes. Jews who have lived here for over 1,000 years are overjoyed at the creation of the great democracy for which they and their fellow Poles have struggled for so long. But the great democracy soon makes new rules for the Jews. New rules with an old sound.
So now we have a cold pogrom. Boycott. Starve the Jew out. We may not work in government. We may not work in a factory. We may not even work in a Jewish-owned factory, or the Polish workers will strike. So how are we supposed to earn a living? Maybe it's time to get out of Poland.
But the safety valve of open immigration to the United States has been closed by America's new restrictive quotas. So most Polish Jews must remain. ORT schools begin to fight back, outwitting each new Polish restriction.
Another law. All craftsmen must join a guild. But first, you must pass an examination in Polish.
But they know most of our kids can only read Yiddish or Hebrew.
So, ORT will teach them how to read Polish. Easy.
They say the new apprentice exams are very hard.
Well, that ORT will make our boys better craftsmen. Easy.
But it costs money to take the test.
Money? Now that's not easy. But we'll get it from somewhere.
ORT's work is gaining worldwide support. In England in 1930, a dinner is given for ORT, and Einstein is guest of honor. George Bernard Shaw attends and, surprisingly, gives a contribution of $25,000. ORT grows. Its school in Vilna becomes famous throughout Eastern Europe. Many of its graduates will one day form the backbone of Israel's technical staffs. The school in Kovno teaches the heart as well as the hands, and each student has a garden to help cultivate. With an ORT diploma, the young can now enter into the mainstream of modern society. But for the older generation, this new, changing world is a strange and difficult one.
Look, easy it's not. But, like it says in our song, was is gewesen, is gewesen. What is past, is past.
Was gewesen, is gewesen, in it all. Schön weg, jene Jür, jene Schuh. Wie schnell verfließt junge Glück. Keine Kenntnis mit Hoffen mehr zurück. Weil was gewesen, ist gewesen, in it all. Die Kräfte werden schwach, die Jugend ruht. Men näht sich, men kleidt sich, men macht sich schön. Men nach Sommer keinen nur sich allein. Weil was gewesen, ist gewesen, in it all.
The Germans from the stupid and degrading superstition of conscience and morality. We will raise ourselves a youth before whom the entire world will tremble. I want a youth capable of violence, masterful, inflexible, cruel. A magnificent, untamed animal must look out of its eyes. I do not want any intellectual upbringing.
The smell of Hitler is beginning to sicken Germany. By 1933, ORT is forced to move its world headquarters from Berlin to Paris. British ORT takes over the Berlin school to give it international protection. By 1937, the Berlin school is desperately training young Jews during the day and adults at night. Doctors, lawyers, civil servants, businessmen are instructed in electroplating, motor repairs, metalwork. Its sole aim, to prepare them for immigration. 1938.
900 of us Jews with money and foresight have managed to get our families out of Germany. We sail on the St. Louis, and we all have visas for Cuba. We'll wait there, and eventually maybe the United States will let us in. After all, we have relatives.
But when the ship docks, the Jews are forbidden to land. Cuba will not recognize its own visa. Batista refuses to admit them. In desperation, the Joint Distribution Committee posts a bond for $500,000 with the Cubans as a guarantee that these affluent Jewish refugees will not need government support.